Good morning, I'm Kenneth Moten.
And I'm Elizabeth Herr. Here are the top 5 things to know this Monday. Number 1, the violent weather overnight.
At least one tornado tore through northern Dallas. The roof collapsed on a large retail store. At least one building was flattened and cars were overturned. 2 other tornadoes were reported east of Tyler, Texas.
Some people suffered cuts when windows shattered, but no serious injuries have been reported so far. Parts of eastern Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi are also bracing for possible tornadoes today.
Number 2, the crisis in Syria. The ceasefire between Turkey and the Kurds is set to expire today.
The New York Times reports President Trump may be in favor of a new plan to keep about 200 U.S. troops in eastern Syria to fight ISIS. It comes as he faces criticism from both parties for his recent order to withdraw nearly all American troops from that country. On to number 3. The Army is trying to determine why 3 soldiers were killed during a training exercise at a base in Georgia.
The Bradley fighting vehicle like this one rolled over into the water early Sunday morning at Fort Stewart. Investigators are looking at a variety of potential causes.
Fortunately, casualties in training mishaps are quite rare. But the real tragedy lies in that they can almost always have been prevented. In this case, investigators will go back and look at what were the circumstances. Why didn't they see was water before it rolled into the water?
Well, in addition to those who lost their lives, 3 other soldiers were injured.
We head to Hong Kong for number 4, where there was chaos this morning as thousands of pro-democracy protesters defied a ban on gathering.
Demonstrators tossed firebombs and vandalized businesses. They set barricades on fire and smashed up subway stations.
Police used tear gas and a water cannon, which sprayed protesters with a stinging blue-dyed liquid. Dozens were hurt and rushed to the hospital.
And finally, number 5, the emotion on display in college football. It involved a player from the University of Minnesota.
His name is Casey O'Brien. He's a 4-time cancer survivor. And during this weekend's game, for the first time, he held the ball for an extra point. Then he shared a long hug with his coach.
He says after his long health battle, this moment on the field with his team and coach meant the world to him.
This is what I dreamed about, and tonight it got to come true.
When you get the word that you're going in, what's going through your mind?
A lot. I just catch it and put it down. That's all I got to do.
O'Brien has survived 14 surgeries and loved this update. He says he's been cancer-free for more than a year now.
Yeah, definitely rooting for him.
We've got much more to talk about coming your way.
It's Morning America, and on a Monday.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Monday
Great
morning.
to be here on this Monday morning.
Yes.
We got some news to get to as well.
We do, and let's get right to it. The impeachment showdown in Washington is what we're going to begin here with. President Trump's chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, is once again trying to clarify his remarks about a quid pro quo with Ukraine. Meanwhile, President Trump has reversed his decision to hold a summit at one of his resorts after critics accused him of a corrupt act that violates the Constitution. ABC's Andrea Fujii here with all the very latest. Good morning, Andrea.
Good morning, Elizabeth. For Democrats and Republicans, they both criticized the president's proposal to host the summit at his resort, even though he promised he wouldn't profit. But now a change of heart as he calls out the media and Democrats for the decision.
President Trump upset with the fallout over his plan to hold the G7 summit at his Miami resort. The president tweeted he was forced to cancel the idea because of do-nothing Democrat fake news anger. In a rare reversal, the president blamed it on, quote, irrational hostility. Last week, he directed the 2020 Group of 7 summit to be held at his 800-acre Doral resort. Though the president promised to host the summit at cost, the idea sparked immediate backlash. Even the White House counsel's office privately expressed reservations, as did some Republicans.
It's important to have integrity in what you say and do, and I can't imagine how they would say it's good to have Trump use his hotel for the G7.
Meanwhile, the president's acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, backpedaled on his admission last week that there was a quid pro quo in the president's phone call with Ukraine, now at the center of the Democrats' impeachment inquiry.
Yeah, which ultimately then flowed.
But to be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo. It is funding will not flow unless the investigation into the Democratic server happened as well.
We do that all the time with foreign policy.
But in an explanation on Fox News, Mulvaney denied ever saying there was a quid pro quo.
So I recognize that folks, that I didn't speak clearly maybe on Thursday. Folks misinterpreted what I said. But I never said there was a quid pro quo, because there isn't.
Also this week, House impeachment investigators expect to hear from multiple administration officials, including William Taylor, a top U.S. diplomat in Ukraine who questioned withholding aid to the country.
A replacement site for the G7 hasn't been picked yet, but over the weekend, President Trump said a search has begun and suggested Camp David as a possibility. Elizabeth and Kenneth.
Andrea, thank you. Now to the breaking news overnight, our first look at widespread damage in the Dallas area after at least one reported tornado overnight. This dramatic video shows the moment that twister touched down. Several homes and businesses are damaged in the northern part of the city this morning.
And we should tell you the severe weather threat is not over. You can see that line of storms on the march. Parts of Missouri are also being impacted with damaging winds and tornadoes possible.
Tornado in Dallas.
This morning, damage in Dallas after what appears to be a direct hit from a tornado. This dramatic video taken as the twister hit overnight.
Go in the tornado! We're in a tornado!
Radar tracked the twister for 17 miles across the northern part of the city, damaging homes and flipping cars.
So I went and got my bathtub and put pillows and a mattress over me and just held on, and it felt like a train, just like they say it does.
One of the damaged homes is owned by pro hockey player Tyler Seguin of the Dallas Stars. Here's the before picture and the picture he tweeted after the tornado.
Holy cow.
The powerful winds knocked down power lines, leaving tens of thousands of customers without power.
Windows busted all over the house. The gas meter in the backyard is hissing. Our backyard fence, tree, patio cover, everything was just down, gone.
This morning, there are reports of at least one building collapse, along with several businesses damaged, including this Home Depot. And the roof of this church now gone.
Just started praying that we would come through alive.
Christy Condry was watching the Cowboys game on TV when the twister came barreling through.
We've got a huge tree in the pool. Our fence is down. We've lost another tree, but we're alive. I never dreamed that I would be in one. And I know this was probably a light one. I don't care what kind it was. I never want to be in one again.
So we know that several people were taken to the hospital, but no serious injuries are reported from these storms.
Get out of the house. Get mama. Get out of the house. There's a fire. Get up.
Now to the dramatic scene in Allentown, Pennsylvania, as neighbors woke each other up going door to door, helping each other escape this fire that spread through a row of homes. Many fled in their pajamas. 10 homes in a single block were destroyed and 44 people have been displaced, but nobody fortunately was seriously hurt. Investigators are now looking into whether a gas explosion started that fire.
And a fast-moving house fire north of Los Angeles almost cost a firefighter his life. Watch this. He slipped off the roof and fell to the ground. Luckily, he suffered only a shoulder injury. The firefighters quickly knocked down the fire and kept it from spreading in those high winds there in California.
Overseas chaos in Hong Kong as thousands of pro-democracy protesters defy a ban on gathering. Once again, demonstrators tossed firebombs and vandalized businesses. They set barricades on fire and smashed up subway stations. Police used tear gas and a water cannon, which sprayed protesters with a stinging blue-dyed liquid. Dozens were hurt and rushed to the hospital.
In the time you'll be on board Qantas' new flight from New York to Sydney, you could binge watch 2 seasons of Friends, take a nap, eat your weight in snacks, take a few laps around the shiny Boeing 787-9. That's because it's now the longest commercial flight in the world.
It was a test flight, and it carried 49 passengers and crew around the world in just under a day.
We're the first commercial airline to fly non-stop from New York to Sydney. This is part of our Project Sunrise, and this is the first of 3 test flights that's going to come up with recommendations about how we manage pilot fatigue, how we actually manage passenger jet lag, and after 19 hours on the flight, I think we've gotten this right.
Well, we're told passengers got up and did the Macarena at one point to pass the time when they were in the sky above Las Vegas. Qantas has plans, as you just heard, for 2 more test flights this year, a November flight from London to Sydney and another New York to Sydney flight in December. They hope to make them commercially available to everyone in 2020.
Could you imagine when the Macarena started over Las Vegas and you're like, we
Wait,
still have like 15 hours to go. Turn this plane around.
I know.
Put it down right now.
And you want me to do what? Okay.
But that's our question of the day. How long is too long for a flight? 15 hours,
19.
17 hours, 24 hours? That's not possible, right? Tell us in the comments or tweet us at ABC News Live. We want to know. Tell us what the longest flight you've been on as well.
This is true. Yeah.
And what do you do on that flight? I watched 5 movies in a row on my way to Australia.
I sleep.
Oh, no, I slept too, but I also watched 5 movies in a row.
What is that, 10 hours at least? Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah? Wow.
That was a lot.
Yeah. Tell us.
We want to know. Hey, the Oregon high school football coach who disarmed a student carrying a loaded shotgun is being called a hero. Keenan Lowe is seen on surveillance video hugging the 18-year-old student after giving the gun to a teacher. Police say the teen was intending to hurt himself, not others. He pleaded guilty to unlawful possession of a firearm in public and was sentenced to 3 years probation. We knew of this story, but actually seeing the video and seeing that coach there, that educator, this mentor inside that school, putting his arms around this troubled student.
Exactly.
It just says so much.
I did, exactly. Not just disarming the student, but, you know, hugging him, letting him know you're going to be okay.
Yeah, definitely. Well, coming up, why sheep are taking over Spain's largest city.
Plus, what went wrong when officials tried to demolish the crane swinging over that hotel collapse in New Orleans. After this.
Welcome back. Now to the south, where crews used strategically placed explosives to try to bring down those 2 remaining cranes that were perched precariously over downtown New Orleans.
It comes more than a week after that deadly collapse of a Hard Rock hotel that was under construction. Construction cranes in New Orleans demolished. Officials using explosives to topple the 2 cranes looming dangerously over the city. The explosion setting off a massive cloud. When the dust cleared, 1 crane still hanging over the building while the other fell to the ground.
It's way better than what it looks, okay? I know what it looks like, but if you remember, we talked about cutting the crane, remember, and then it hooking on the building. It's exactly what it did.
Officials saying the demolition went exactly as planned, with only minimal damage to a neighboring theater.
3 windows broken at the Sanger Theater. The utilities are intact at Sanger. And no information in terms of other buildings that have been damaged.
The operation coming just over a week after that deadly collapse of the Hard Rock Hotel under construction. 3 workers killed. The remains of 1 victim recovered from the site, but the other 2 still inside.
We're way better than we were. If you remember, our objective was to get these down, make it safer so we can go to our next objective, which is recovery, to give these families closure.
The city brought in experts, including engineers who worked on demolitions following the 9/11 terror attacks.
The gas line that we were worried about and the electric lines, we believe they are A-OK.
An evacuation zone was set up, and residents across a wider area were advised to stay indoors during the controlled demolition. As for that 1 crane still standing, officials say it is stable and it will now be cut down piece by piece.
Let's go to Syria, where the clock is ticking on a pause in Turkey's offensive against the Kurds after President Trump ordered nearly all U.S. troops out of the country. New York Times says he's now leaning in favor of a plan to keep 200 special operations forces in eastern Syria to combat ISIS. Let's go across the pond to our foreign correspondent, Julia McFarland in the London Bureau with the latest. Julia, good morning.
Morning, Kenneth. Morning, Elizabeth. That's exactly right. So over the weekend, whilst there have been reports of sporadic fighting still in northeastern Syria, despite that so-called ceasefire, what we did see was Kurdish fighters withdrawing from a key border town called Ras Al Ain, and that was a requirement for this truce, which the U.S. brokered with Turkey for a safe zone along the border. Now, the Kurds, they had to withdraw from that town town, and now they're going to start pulling back. It's an area of around 20 miles around the border, and that is what Turkey wants to achieve. Now, our correspondent James Longman is there. He is just across the border in Iraqi Kurdistan, and he spoke to a senior Kurdish commander. Now, while President Trump has defended this deal reached with Turkey, the Kurds are not happy about it after more than 200 have been killed. Let's hear a little from what this Kurdish commander had to say to James.
Donald Trump says that the Kurds are happy.
I would tell Mr. Trump that the Kurds are not happy. They've killed all these people, so of course we are not happy. This agreement has allowed Turkey to occupy our land and kill our people.
The rest of northern Syria, you don't believe that that's part of the agreement?
Exactly. This is not included. They only told us Ras Al Ain.
So the Kurdish SDF are clearly complying so far with the requirements for this truce, but clearly not happy about it. Also, it appears maybe some of the US soldiers are not entirely comfortable at leaving their allies. An AFP photographer in the region, he managed to take a photo of an American soldier wearing the insignia of the YPG, the women's units of the Kurdish forces there, as the US forces were leaving northeastern Syria. Now, one other thing that the Kurds are really worried about is ethnic cleansing. Now, on This Week or ABC, George Stephanopoulos asked the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, whether the administration was going to assure Congress and Kurdish allies that the US would not stand for ethnic cleansing. He was clear with George. He said the administration is clear that we are not going to be a party to any attack on any minority. But that's not exactly the same thing, because what Turkey wants to do, don't forget, they have more than 1 million Syrian refugees in camps just on the other side of that border in Turkey. They want to use this safe zone to push all those refugees back and get them out of Turkish territory and back into Syria. And what that would do is that would disrupt a very delicate ethnic balance in Syria. It is a country that has tribal heartlands belonging to different ethnic minorities that have been that way for generations. And so what an influx of Syrian Sunnis could do would be to disrupt that and add to more sectarian tensions, which could contribute to conflict in the future.
Well, certainly more to come on that front, but let's move on to Lebanon. Julia, where we understand hundreds of thousands have taken to the streets in protest over new tax proposals, which we are hearing that it seems this has been a long time coming, but the anger is just now boiling over.
Yeah, exactly. Lebanon has been gripped by political and economic turmoil for years, but especially since the start of the Syrian war right next door. They've had to deal with a huge influx of Syrian refugees into this tiny country of 4 million people. That population is now has now inflated to about 5 million people. Their resources are severely under strain. They have no means of garbage disposal, for one thing. The electricity is having to come on in certain periods, and there are blackouts around the country. So Lebanese have had to deal with a lot the last few years. But the straw that broke the camel's back recently was when the government announced that they wanted to put a tax on WhatsApp. They wanted to charge people to use that popular encrypted messaging app, and that just sent everyone over the edge. And all over the country, in the capital Beirut, in Tripoli, all over in the main cities, hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets and protesting. And what is really unusual and what is really interesting about this is not just the fact that it has seen so many people. There are quite often protests in Lebanon, but not of this size, and not for a repeated number of days, but the fact that everyone there seemed to have united. Now, we've just been talking about Syria. Lebanon is incredibly sectarian. Even their constitution and their parliament is divided into different ethnic groups. It's a very, very divided country. And for people and watchers of the region, it was incredibly interesting to see everyone united under the Lebanese flag.
People also appear to be united in Madrid because they were not sleeping on this.
Oh dear, Kenneth.
Take it away, Julia.
Have a look at these incredible pictures from the Spanish capital. 2,000 merino sheep and 100 goats. Now, all the roads were closed, and these sheep replaced the traffic on the streets of Madrid on Sunday as shepherds steered their flocks through the heart of the capital. Now, this is basically, it's an annual event which started in 1994, and it follows ancient migratory routes, and it basically exploits a loophole in Spanish law which allows farmers to pay a nominal charge in acknowledging an ancient agreement dating back to the 15th century to transport sheep from one side of the countryside to the other, cutting across the capital. Now, this is a traditional event, but it's also a chance for farmers to protest about protecting agriculture, and it's a chance for them to have everyone watching them as they take their sheep through and basically say, argue that environmental and agricultural industries need more protection. But quite a sight. And I saw a lovely article over the weekend that there were a couple of tourists who had arrived in the city and they were confused as to why they couldn't get a bus. And they had no idea. And then they turned a corner and there were all these sheep everywhere. Yeah. And they were not expecting this. And they thought that it was lovely to be there for a bit of Spanish tradition.
You really have to check in to know what's happening when you visit a country. So a little sheep, a little sangria, not so bad. And no lie, I was counting the sheep just now and I literally started to fall asleep. So
2,000. Stay awake, Kenneth, stay awake.
I'm working on it, my friend. Thank you, Julia. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Let's check our notifications now, starting with some wild Halloween decorations. This California house is going all out for the holiday. Look at that. Bling, bling.
I know. I feel like we've seen several houses every week.
Apparently,
going
this is
all
only
out.
for the weekend, though, right?
Yes.
In Tracy, California.
Yes, yes, yes. And so the neighbors are thankful for that. But hey, it is quite a show. And then it's a case of life imitating art on a staircase right here in New York City.
Joker fans were flocking to that set of stairs in the Bronx that played a pivotal role in the new movie when Joaquin Phoenix's character crosses over the point of no return into a life of violent crime.
And now those stairs are getting the social media treatment.
I'm so excited from this movie. I want to feel what he feels.
Goosebumps.
Why?
5 minutes ago when I was driving, I was getting excited for this, and I didn't know why, but I was like, because I live in New York for a long time, but, you know, this was something different.
Something different. By the way, Joker got knocked down from the #1 spot at the box office this weekend by our parent company Disney's Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. But that movie Joker already has taken in $750 million worldwide.
It's breaking all those records. They think it could reach $1 billion.
Wow. To be determined.
Yeah. Next, a tweet apparently sent by Hillary Clinton has lots of people asking questions.
That tweet appears to mock President Trump's recent letter to Turkey's president, where Trump wrote in part, "Don't be a tough guy, don't be a fool, I will call you later."
So in comes Clinton, who tweeted, "Found in the archives," with the image of a mock letter from President Kennedy to the Soviet Union's leader during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It reads, "Don't be a blank, okay? Get your missiles out of Cuba. Give you a jingle later. Hugs."
Well, that mock letter Clinton tweeted first appeared last week on Jimmy Kimmel's show. So critics are now saying, hey, Clinton could have at least given Kimmel credit, and others are asking, why is she even on Twitter trolling president? Well, a lot of people are on Twitter.
Right.
Yeah.
And college football's low light of the weekend came from Oklahoma's big victory over West Virginia.
The so-called Sooner Schooner was out on the field after a touchdown. Ay, 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 when it tipped over, as you see there, throwing riders and everything inside onto the field. The accident was blamed on incorrect weight distribution in the back of the wagon. Thankfully, though, it looked scary, but no one was hurt. Ooh, ay, ay.
Yeah, I know. Just goes tumbling there. It's incredibly nobody was hurt there. So
coming up, we have a look at what's happening in the day ahead.
Plus, I got a sneak peek at Jimmy Kimmel's return to Brooklyn. Hear what he has in store after this.
Here's what to watch out for today. President Trump is scheduled to hold a cabinet meeting before having lunch with Vice President Mike Pence.
The first federal opioid trial is set to begin after negotiations over a possible $48 billion settlement broke down. The jury trial will put state and local governments against makers and distributors of the addictive painkillers.
U.S. health officials are set to provide an update on the measles outbreak that's become the largest in a quarter century. And 3 parents are expected in federal court today to plead guilty to charges in the college admission scandal.
Plus, don't forget to tune into The Debrief for an update on our top stories in the briefing room for a breakdown of the latest headlines in politics.
It's become somewhat of a tradition now, with Jimmy Kimmel packing up his late night show and heading east.
For the 4th time, Jimmy is bringing his LA-based show to his native Brooklyn, and this weekend he and I spent some time together to bring you Kenneth and Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel, welcome back to Brooklyn.
Thank you.
So what's it like being back?
It's exciting to be back. It's fun. Brooklyn is fun. You know, there's a lot of energy here that we don't have in LA.
So what do you got planned for this week?
We have great guests. We've got Bruce Springsteen and Alicia Keys to start things off. We've got Eddie Murphy is on the show, the Sugar Hill Gang, the National, John Krasinski. We have a bunch of surprises. Don't even ask what they are.
I'm not going to ask.
I will not tell you. Go ahead and ask.
Jimmy, what's one of the surprises?
I can't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why keep coming back to Brooklyn?
We love it here. We love being here. The audience is excited, and we get excited, and with this beautiful venue we're in, the Brooklyn Academy of Music is a great place to do a show, and we get great guests, and we eat like pigs.
You eat your weight. Your weight.
At least my weight.
Food.
Yeah.
Your pizza, I heard when you touched down here in New York, you went straight to get some pizza.
We went right to get pizza, yeah. We tell the kids, you know, wait till you have pizza in Brooklyn, and they loved it. And my son, who's only 2 years old, did something incredible last night. He folded his pizza in half and ate it the way, and I've never been more proud.
Did you cry a little bit?
A tear came, yes.
Jimmy is great. He's such a down-to-earth guy.
It's so funny. I did ask, is he really nice in person?
He really, really is nice. We go back years. We really are friends. He's my buddy. He's my pal. I actually will be going to the show tonight, and I can't wait. Again, Bruce Springsteen kicking things off, and Alicia Keys. You can watch Jimmy Kimmel live late night on ABC, and stay tuned to Is Morning America all this week because we're going to have some little fun things with Jimmy.
I was going to say, you've got more to come.
We got more to come, and so we're going to have that for you right here on It's Morning America. I promise I'm going to make Digital Dave, our producer, put this in the show. We're going to have it for you. I promise.
Yes, yes, yes. In the meantime, watch Jimmy tonight and have a great day.
Have a good one. We will see you tomorrow.